And we're back, ladies and gentlemen, raiders and raidettes, to another episode of Talking Tabletops. In this one, we're going to continue our deep dive from last episode into the Fallout role-playing game by Modiphius, or as I like to call it, Fallout 2D20. The last time we took a look at this system, we essentially took a very basic look at the entire system as a whole and established the core rulebook as its mission statement and its setting. In this episode, we could run a bit longer and tackle the actual core rules for the game. So grab your copy of the rules, crack open a Nuka-Cola, and let's take a look at the print book or your PDF. The core rules for Fallout begin with breaking down what tabletop role-playing is all about. For the players, it's important to know that as a player, you will be embodying a single individual within the Fallout universe, grouped with others into a traveling party. Your adventures are the general TTRPG flair, but for those of you who aren't accustomed to tabletops, I'm going to do a brief rundown. As you and your group travel the wasteland, you will be encountering challenges, encounters, and moments where you will need to act during some sort of situational risk. These moments include and stand alongside combat, but in general, these moments will require a skill test. This will determine whether you succeed or fail, which drives the story along. A story is pushed forward in general by cause and effect, mixing with context which establishes plot. The player, that's going to be most of you, and the game masters among you will need to determine how success and failure help the game's story to evolve. This method of play, outside of combat, is considered pretty free-form, or free-form play. Time isn't counted in 6-second rounds, there is no set order, and you can pretty well interject yourself into a moment with great effect. Read the room and pick your moment to become a player, not a viewer. On screen, Lucy, Maximus, and the Ghoul have agency because of their experiences. You embody your character. Jonathan Nolan and Todd Howard aren't writing the story. You and your friends are. Now, Game Masters, listen up. This one here is just for you. You are a player, just like your friends, except your job is fundamentally different. Your goal is the same, have fun, but you are choosing to take on a responsibility to this friend group. You will be essentially providing improvisation to player action, and they will surprise you every single time. It is your job to introduce the story and respond to how the character's actions change the story, and how non-player characters respond to them. But you will use the core rules as well when taking actions with the NPCs. This is what makes you fair, and as a note, your game master integrity has to be solid. Or here's the consequence of it not being solid. The players are not going to believe that the dice and their choices matter. If they know your fudging rolls and notes, your integrity falls and they don't have agency. You do. This can also apply to taking it too hard or too easy on the players. My personal style is to interpret the rolls as they happen. Narrative can offer mercy if it's necessary, and we've all fudged a roll here and there, but this is an extreme situation. It should be more rare than 3 back-to-back nat 20s, or in this system, 3 back-to-back nat 1s. We play games like this to adapt to the uncertainty of the results. Trust the process. So let's go back to skill tests. This is the most basic way players and game masters will statistically interact with the world. So it's important to learn what this is first and foremost. So, Skill tests are a way to determine the outcome of an action a player or a character wants to do. You roll some dice, and you figure out if things succeed, if they fail, or somehow are further complicated by what happens. When the game master asks for a check, what they are asking for is for you to roll a minimum of 2d20 and apply your character attributes to the roll to see what the result is. You will need to roll more successes than the difficulty rating in order to pass. Your target number is the number that each of your d20 dice need to hit or be below in order to count for a success. The target number is a combination of two stats: your attribute plus your skill rank. Now, the Game Master can use any combination of attributes and skills to make truly unique challenges. For example, you may be very handy with a revolver, as long as it works. However, you might not be the smartest waster on the sand. You may be required to roll an intelligence plus guns roll to identify the special modification installed on a new gun. So that might be a 2 intelligence and a 1 gun skill. My target number in that case would be 3, which is pretty rough stuff. So let's break down exactly how that will look. The Game Master will call for a check with an attribute plus a skill combination and maybe a situational modifier. The Game Master will then set a difficulty, normally between 1 and 5 depending on how difficult the action you want to perform is. So, for a difficulty 2 test, you will need to roll on or below your target number on each of your dice twice. So, you're going to roll with your dice pool. Now, a dice pool is just the amount of dice total being rolled for any one check. Every roll starts with 2 d20 dice. However, you can use action points to buy up to 3 additional d20s, which will give you a better chance of hitting your total successes needed. After adding any additional dice from action points, you may roll the entire pool. Now, you've rolled the dice. If you rolled real dice, you got to hear that sweet, sweet thrumming sound as they settled. Now, you have to check for successes. Rolls that are equal to or below your target number count as a success, but a 1 counts as a critical success, which means you can count that single dice as 2 regular successes. So, a critical is worth 2 regular successes. Some important notes. A natural roll is the result from a dice roll without modifiers from stats or perks. So if someone says that they rolled a natural or a nat, the dice literally landed on that specific number. Also, a critical success in this system is not an automatic pass on a check. This isn't D&D. Also important, at character creation, you will select tag skills, which will critically succeed on each dice that rolls equal to or below your target number. So it will very much matter how you specialize your character. For every critical success, there is also a critical failure, or in this system, a natural roll of 20 or a d20 is a complication, but we're going to look into that a little bit later. So, now we need to compare our rolled successes against that difficulty rating from earlier. If the number of successes rolled is equal to or higher than the difficulty, you succeed in your test. If not, this has resulted in a failure overall. Now, each success above your difficulty rating generates an action point, so keep those action points spending. After that, you get the interpreted result. This is either provided from the player or the game master. You can also, however, spend action points on an already successful check to improve things even more. After that, the game master interprets any complications as well. It is possible to succeed with a complication. We have an example from the book to frame what we've learned. Nate needs to find out if Codsworth is okay, as he's been on his own for 200 years. His test is difficulty 1, and he must use charisma plus speech, which is, in this case, 7 plus 2 equaling 9. Nate's player rolls 2d20, checking the results separately, and he rolls a 5 and a 19. Because the 5 is equal or below Nate's target number, which is 9, he scores 1 success and passes the test. Codsworth describes how hard it's been to try and keep the house clean for 2 centuries. Hilariously, I actually have a clip of this very interaction from Fallout 4.
Codsworth, you're acting a little bit weird. What's wrong?
Oh, sir, it's been just horrible. 2 centuries with no one to talk to, no one to serve. I spent the first 10 years trying to keep the floors waxed, but nothing gets out nuclear fallout from vinyl wood. Oh, nothing. And don't get me started about the futility of dusting a collapsed house. And the car, how do you polish rust?
Stay with me.
So, we've handled the concept of doing a skill check, but let's take a closer look at target numbers and pass-fail results, because the tag rule can sometimes get confusing if you've never played with a rule like this. So, let's review what we've learned in greater detail. When your game master asks for a skill test, you agree to an attribute plus skill combination from your character sheet. This best applies to the action you're trying to achieve. That target number is made by adding your chosen attribute or your special stat and the skill that the game master told you it would consist of. This amount gives you the number. Each d20 must roll equal to or under. If it does, then you generate 1 success. Now, the number of successes you need to generate with your d20s to pass any one test is called the difficulty. I have referred to it as the difficulty rating, but it's just difficulty. Only needing 1 success describes a routine task, while needing 5 successes reflects a very difficult task that can only be completed with guts and determination. Each d20 that rolls equal to or under the target number generates that 1 success. However, a d20 can generate 2 successes by rolling a critical success. For example, if you had a target number of 10 made up of an attribute plus skill combination of 8 plus 2, each d20 that rolled a 2 through 10 would generate 1 success, while any d20s that rolled a 1 would generate 2 successes. If you were using a tagged skill, each d20 that rolled a 3 to 10 would generate 1 success, while any d20s that rolled a 1 or a 2 would generate 2 successes. Total up the number of successes and compare them against the difficulty. If you equal or beat the difficulty, you pass the test. Any extra successes over and above the difficulty become action points. These allow you to improve the test's outcome or buy more d20s for future tests. Okay, so we're doing good? And a lot of the rules in TTRPGs have to be played to really understand. So if things are a little bit confusing, it will make more sense as you actually play the game. When you attempt a test, any d20 roll that rolls a 1 is a critical success. We've already said that. Each critical success you roll generates 2 successes. Very important to remember that. If the skill you're using is one of your tag skills, then you'll score a critical success for any d20 that rolls equal to or less than your rating in that skill, which is what happened in our example from above. The skill combination of 8 plus 2. The rank was 2, so a 2 or below indicates a critical success. That does not mean that any roll with a tag skill is automatically a critical success. But the higher rank you have, the better chances you have of succeeding critically. Let's take a look at another example. If your sneak skill is 3 and it's a tag skill, any d20 that rolls a 3 or lower will be a critical success. This means you will technically be rolling many critical hits with your tag skills. Something very cool about this system is the variety of ways you can roll skill checks. Fans of the games know that certain attributes normally correlate to certain skills. However, while there are default combos, there really don't have to be. The skill list on your character sheet lists a default attribute associated with each skill. Some, if not most tests, may prescribe a default attribute plus skill combination to work out your primary target number. But at the GM's discretion, you can actually suggest a different combination. You might use intelligence and small guns to identify the make of a weapon, or strength plus medicine to pop a dislocated shoulder back into place. You can always suggest an alternative route, an alternative attribute plus skill combination for your target number, but your game master will always have the final say. Important to note, there is also a difficulty rating chart included in the books on page 14, and this ranges from 0 to 5, and yes, there are difficulty 0 tests. But we'll get into that a little bit later. Earlier, we talked about how one of the elements that can happen when you resolve a roll is a complication, which can occur on a success or a failure. When attempting a test, each d20 that rolls a 20, a nat 20, causes a complication. A new detail in the scene that makes things more difficult that comes into effect once the test has been resolved. A complication could introduce a new problem. The book gives several examples which are all plausible in this setting, like a gun jamming, maybe breaking a lockpick or a bobby pin. Or it could make specific skill tests more difficult in the future, like rudely insulting a merchant, so charisma plus barter tests with him in the future are increased by a difficulty of 1. Complications do not prevent you from succeeding, but they do introduce something new to the story that makes things more difficult. If you and the game master can't come up with a complication for your situation, for the scene that you're in, the game master could instead just gain 1 action point to use for their non-player characters and creatures later. We actually have another example featuring yet another Fallout 4 companion, MacCready. So MacCready has a mysterious disease, and his player has rolled a complication on his medicine check to try and recover a little to keep moving forward. The game master can't think of a complication and asks the group, "Well, do you have any ideas?" MacCready's player suggests, well, he could get a fever, and the GM takes the suggestion and uses it as your head pounds. Any intelligence test difficulties are increased by 1 until you get it healed. Makes sense. Reviewing the dice pool mechanics, let's go ahead and take another look with a specific example this time. Normally, you roll 2 d20s and check the results individually against your target number and count up the number of successes that you generate. But you can buy more dice to roll. With action points, or AP, you can buy up to 3 more d20s to roll on any test. This means you can roll a total pool of 5 d20 at any one time. Action points are further covered on page 18 of the book. Here's an example. Kate, another Fallout 4 companion, is facing a difficulty 3 test to steal some bottle caps from right under her captor's noses. And with 3 action points in the group pool, she opts to purchase 2 more d20s using all 3 AP in the pool. Her player will now roll 4 d20. improving the odds of generating the 3 successes that they need. Now, referring back to difficulty 0 tests, these tests may be difficulty 0, or maybe your character's perks or gear may reduce a test's difficulty to 0. If a test difficulty ends up being 0, you don't need to roll. Your action automatically is successful with no risk of complications whatsoever. However, because no roll is made, you will not be able to generate any action points either. So this is always a great opportunity to recuperate spent action points. At your game master's discretion, you can still choose to roll the dice against a difficulty of 0. Because 0 successes are required, every success becomes an action point. But you can still suffer complications by rolling a 20, as normal. This sort of difficulty 0 test is useful if it's important to see how successful your character is when there's really no chance of failure. And those are really all the standard ways to handle a skill test, but skill tests aren't the only kinds of tests. Think about test types like golf. Sometimes you need the driving iron, sometimes you need the wedge. Different contexts will require a different approach. This adds variety to how the game is played, and it helps it keep from being the same sort of thinking and the same sort of math all the time. Sometimes situations will occur that pit one character directly against another. Not necessarily like a I shoot the raider, but more involved. Let's break down a new sort of test, the opposed test. Sometimes you're going to face situations that are not difficult because of the task itself, but because of an opposing force trying to prevent your success. In these cases, you and the opposing player, normally the game master, will both roll a dice pool, and you'll compare results to see who wins. When another character opposes you in a test, their player rolls their d20 dice pool. After buying any extra d20s and the number of successes that they generate, that becomes the difficulty of your test. Then, you attempt your test with your opponent's number of successes as your difficulty. If you equal or beat your opponent's number of successes, you win the opposed test, and any extra successes become action points. However, if you do not generate enough successes to meet the difficulty, you fail, and your opponent could generate AP. Let's take a look at another example. Yet another Fallout 4 companion is in trouble. Paladin Dance of the Brotherhood of Steel is grappling a Deathclaw. He's holding it back from advancing on this squad. The Game Master decides that this is an opposed test and rolls a test for the Deathclaw. Rolling 2d20, the Game Master scores 3 successes, meaning Dance's test will be difficulty 3. Dance has a target number of 8, so his player decides to buy 2 more d20s with the action points in the pool to ensure he gets the successes he needs and rolls the pool of 4 d20. Dance rolls a 1, a 5, 6, and 18, which generates 4 successes. Dance holds his ground, and he banks 1 extra action point for the extra success. Now, had he rolled a 10 instead of a 1, he would have failed by 1 success instead, and the Game Master would have gained 1 AP for the Deathclaw. Now, there are 2 sub-blurbs relating to opposed checks in the book. These handle the use of action points and increased difficulty for opposed checks. In an opposed test, the opposing characters spend action points first, and then rolls. The active character then may spend AP to add dice to their pool if they wish, and then roll. If 2 player characters are making an opposed test, then both players must generate AP for the GM in order to buy additional d20s. The group pool is for team players. When you succeed in an opposed test, you generate action points by comparing your result to your opponent's. When you are rolling against an established difficulty, any excess success generates AP as normal. When you are the one to roll first, and you establish a difficulty for your opponent, you generate 1 AP for every success less than your number of successes. In an ordinary opposed test, it's assumed the only real source of difficulty is the other character. However, if something increases the difficulty of your test, then your opponent adds that increase to their total successes instead. If something would decrease the difficulty of your test, then your opponent reduces their total successes by that amount instead. So, if your opponent is trying to sneak up on you and it's dark, increasing the difficulty of your perception plus survival test by 1. Then, your opponent adds +1 success to their total instead. All that makes things pretty scary for a new Wastelander, but don't worry, you have help. Unless you're specifically being a lone wanderer, you'll have the help of your friends and allies in the world. One of the best ways they can help is by providing assistance. Don't worry, there are companions in this system too, and any player-controlled companion can also help their main character or friends. Difficult tasks are often completed through teamwork. When someone else is attempting a test, you can assist them if your game master allows it. Describe how you are helping and decide with the game master which attribute and skill combination you're using. It doesn't have to be the same combination as the person you're helping. Then, roll 1d20 and add any successes that you generate to the main person attempting the test. Then roll 1d20 and add any successes you generate to your ally, providing they score at least 1 success of their own. If they didn't generate any successes, then you can't add your successes to their total. You also can't buy additional d20s if you were assisting. You can only roll 1d20. But your d20 doesn't count toward the limit of 5 that the player attempting the test can roll in their own dice pool. Now, while assisting, you can score critical successes or generate complications as normal. So, for example, Dogmeat is assisting the sole survivor in finding some medicine. The game master rolls 1d20 and adds any successes that they get to the sole survivor's player's roll, provided the sole survivor's player gets at least 1 success. Dogmeat's target number of 13, rolling a 1d20, his controlling player rolls a 5, generating 1 success, adding it to the sole survivor's 1 success for a total of 2. There's another type of test called the group test. When your whole group attempts a single large activity, like sneaking through an area together or traveling through a hazardous area, you get to make a special kind of assisted test. This normally occurs when the difficulty is particularly high, requiring multiple participants to make a task short work. This can keep the stakes high while saving time between rolling all individual rolls. Once the game master has set the difficulty, you must decide who is going to lead the test, while the rest of the group assists. The leader of the group test rolls a normal dice pool of 2d20 plus up to 3d20s that they can buy through action points. Everyone else rolls 1d20 using their own attribute plus skill. As long as the test leader achieves 1 success, everyone assisting adds any successes that they also generated to the leader's score. If those accumulated successes equal or beat the difficulty, then the entire group has passed the group test. Any complications generated by anyone in the group rolling a 20 can be applied by the GM after resolving the test and its consequences. So the sole survivor is sneaking past a group of synth seekers, with Deacon and Strong helping an escaped synth to their new life. The game master makes the test difficulty 4, as the synth patrol are incredibly vigilant. Now, Deacon is the best at sneak. He leads the test. His player will roll 2d20 and they spend 1 action point to increase their dice pool to 3d20. Both the sole survivor and strong roll 1d20 each. Deacon ends up scoring 2 successes. The sole survivor scores 1 success, but strong's player fails their roll, the group scoring 3 of the 4 successes that they need. The game master resolves the test, describing how strong was too noisy, and the job of sneaking past the synth group becomes a combat encounter. Now, let's go back to complications, right? Normally, any d20 that rolls a 20 generates a complication. However, some actions can be riskier instead of just more difficult. When tests are riskier, the game master can increase the complication range of the test. So you can generate complications on more results than just a 20. For each increase in the complication range, a complication is generated on the listed d20 results in the complications range table. Now here's a really interesting rule a game master can utilize. There might be times that a game master may allow you to succeed at a cost when you fail a test. In these situations, you achieve whatever it was you were trying to accomplish with your skill test. You may not spend action points to improve the outcome, but in exchange, the game master causes you to suffer 1 or more complications as well. The game master should tell you how many complications you'll suffer. Normally, this is only 1. And you can choose to simply fail if the cost is too high. This next section is all about action points, where they come from, and how you can track them. So, like we've already discussed, when you check your successes against the difficulty, each success above the difficulty becomes an action point. So, for a difficulty 2 task, a roll of 3 successes will bank you 1 action point. Action points can be used to take additional actions, improve the outcome of a test, reduce the time it takes to do a test, learn more about a situation, or even buy more d20s for future tests. So, you can spend action points on the following. 1. You can buy d20s. This costs from 1 to 6 action points. Buying bonus d20s for a test is handled before the dice pool is rolled, but after the game master sets the difficulty. The cost increases for each die purchased. The first d20 costs 1 action point, the second costs 2 action points, and the third costs 3 action points. No more than 3 bonus d20s may be rolled for a single test, including any d20s from perks or traits. Number 2, you could obtain information for 1 action point. You can ask the game master a single question about the current situation based on your test. The game master will answer truthfully, but the answer might not be complete. For a third way, you can reduce time, which costs 2 action points. Action points from a successful test can allow the test to take less time to complete. This is vital when time is of the essence. Spending 2 action points halves the amount of time a test can take to complete or attempt. But that's not all. You also have action point options in combat. You can take an additional minor action for 1 action point. Taking 1 additional minor action in your turn, you can only take a total of 2 minor actions in a single round. Normally, you just get 1. With an action point, you get 2. Or you can take an additional major action for 2 action points. Take 1 additional major action on your turn. Any skill test you must attempt is increased in difficulty by a +1. You can only take a total of 2 major actions in a single round. And then a third way, you can actually add extra damage from 1 to 3 action points. On a successful melee attack or a thrown weapon attack, you can spend action points to add 1 weapon dice per action point spent, up to a maximum of +3 weapon dice for 3 action points. There is even a bonus d20 cost chart on page 18 of the core rules for quick referencing. You can spend action points either before or after you roll a dice, and each option describes when you can spend action points to take advantage of an effect. You can buy d20s for a test before you roll, while you spend action points after a test to obtain information. You can reduce the time, improve the quality of the success, or take an additional action. If you don't want to spend action points you generate immediately, you can save them for the group to use. Action points don't have a personal pool. It is shared for the group, and the group can have a total of 6 action points saved at any one time. So use your action points. However, you're not the only person who's special. The Game Master has an action point pool of their own to spend on NPC and creature actions. They start each quest with 1 action point per player. There is no maximum of how many action points the Game Master can have in their pool. Now, if you don't have any action points to buy d20s, you may instead generate action points for the Game Master. For each action point you want to spend in this way, the Game Master gets to add that much action point to their pool, which has no limit and they can use later on their NPC interactions. You may only give the Game Master action points to buy d20s, and you cannot get action points in this way for other uses of action point. Well, you thought we were done? Nope. Our final section in this episode will handle the last of the special stats and a unique take on how it acts in Fallout. So, in addition to being one of your special attributes, your luck also provides you with luck points. These can be used to shift the odds in your favor in a few different ways. When you start a quest, you will start with a number of luck points equal to your stat. You can spend luck points in a few ways, both in freeform play or on your turn in combat. The luck of the draw. You may spend a luck point to introduce a helpful fact or detail about the situation that you're in, something that you'd have to be lucky to encounter. You could just find the exact right item or the right kind of ammo you've been scavenging for. You could find a key to a locked door or a clue to a computer password. The Game Master may prompt you with an opportunity to do this, or you, the player, may suggest when it could happen. But the Game Master can veto your suggestions, or they can even ask you to spend multiple luck points to make it happen. Stacked deck. You may spend 1 point of luck before you attempt a skill test to use luck instead of the default attribute that's being asked for you to determine your target number. Obviously, this only really has a benefit if your luck is higher than the attribute it's replacing, which makes a luck build actually very viable. For example, if you're needing to wrestle with a super mutant, the normal skill may be strength plus survival or strength plus unarmed. But by spending luck, you can instead roll your luck plus unarmed instead. Lucky timing. In a combat encounter at the start of any round, or immediately after any other character or creature has acted, you may spend 1 luck to interrupt the normal initiative order and take your turn for this round immediately. Now, this counts as your normal turn. It simply allows you to act earlier, and you cannot do it if you have already taken a turn this round. So, use this wisely to get the jump on enemies or to set up a friend in a really cool way. Misfortune. You may also spend 1 or more luck points to re-roll dice in a dice pool that you roll. You may re-roll 1 d20 or up to 3 weapon dice by spending 1 luck point. And you can spend multiple luck points on a roll. Each die may only be re-rolled once. You cannot re-roll a die that has already been re-rolled. You must accept the re-rolled result, even if it's worse than the original roll. So to show this, why don't we have another example featuring everyone's favorite Valentine synth, Nick Valentine. Nick Valentine is hacking a computer, and his player hasn't generated enough successes to pass the skill test. They need 2 successes, and they have rolled a 9 and a 19, generating only 1 success. Nick's player decides to spend a point of his luck and re-roll the d20 that rolled a 19. Rolling it again, Nick's player gets a 6, which generates the second success that they needed to pass the test. And that's not all. Everyone in the wasteland has little pieces of junk that mean something to them that might even help ground them in a moment. And a really good way to show this is the concept of trinkets. Personal trinkets allow your character to regain luck points. Once per quest outside of a combat encounter, your character can spend a few moments looking at the trinket, thinking about what it means to them. When you do, you regain 1 luck point. You can see a personal trinket chart on page 80 of the core rulebook for more details on examples. Now, if you need a quick reference to any of these luck rules, check out the luck options summary on page 21. So, you've got your luck spent. How do you get lucky again? Well, you start a quest with a number of luck points equal to your luck attribute. Once they're spent, they can't be used again until the Game Master refreshes them when you reach a milestone in your quest or when you start a new quest. When you get refreshed, you get all of your luck back, no matter how much of it you spent. However, you can never have any more luck points than what your luck attribute is. And with that, our dive into the core rules is complete. Check in next time when we take a shot at combat. We'll be covering combat encounters, dealing and receiving damage, and dealing and receiving injuries, as well as healing what hurts, and using the environment and likely having your environment used against you. Ladies and gentlemen, Minutemen and Children of Atom, thank you for tuning in. Critically hit that like button if you enjoyed the video and comment down below. Let's have a discussion. Did I miss anything you wanted to hear about? Let me know. Subscribe if you haven't yet and ring the bell so you never miss an episode. This has been Jeff the Narrator with another episode of Talking Tabletops. Have a great day, and as always, keep telling stories.